Don't forget to check out the Bentonhausen 100 at the Illinois State Fairgrounds in Springfield, Illinois, presented by Fatheads Eyewear. We'd love to see you out there Sunday, October 18th.
This is Danny Drinan.
I'm Shane Tecklenburg, and this is The Skinny.
From Fathead Studios in Speedway, Indiana, this is The Skinny. Once again, welcome to The Skinny. We have a couple of great guests that will join us here today. Ken Stout, Rico Elmore, and of course the lovely Georgia Hannaberry sitting between. She is the rose between the two thorns that we will have with us here today. A name that you might not have heard of in a while, Danny Drinan, has joined us here. Great to have him inside the studio. Actually has his business, Drinan Industries, here, located pretty close to us here in Speedway. And then another name that if you're in the industry, you would certainly know, but if you're not in the industry, certainly not a household name. His name is Shane Tecklenburg, one of the guys that's behind the scenes more times than not with any team that you may see. But we could pick out a subject if you want, and we could talk about just a couple of his accomplishments. And this is just a couple of quick ones here.
Oh, hold on a minute. Is that last one tuning Ken's car for nothing?
No, that was Paul Yaw, by the way.
Okay.
But
all right. Close
he introduced me to Paul Yaw. So, again, without Shane, I mean, none of it ever happens. He's in charge of the entire motorsports world from time to time. But, yeah, great to have both of you guys with us. Thanks for making the time.
Thanks, guys, for having us.
Yeah, thanks for the invite. Man, I got excited for a second there. You said there was some really important people going to be on, and I thought, who else are they going to have on here?
When are they getting here, right?
I can't wait to meet them.
It's the astronaut over your shoulder. He'll talk in a minute.
Ken said that was your dad, actually.
Yeah, yep. He's that's how we preserved him. So it's nice to have him here.
I always point out the fighter jet.
Yeah, he was one of the first classes to go through jet fighter pilot training in the Air Force in the 50s. So
Wow.
One of the coolest stories, and I'll make it quick, was, they would fly in and they would call in the approach, right? Well, so it's the 50s, and my dad calls in. My dad was a captain by the time he came out, but he calls in, Elmore and Yeager on approach. Well, they land, and there's about 500 people waiting on Chuck Yeager to get out of the plane, but it was Bill Yeager that was flying with my dad. It's like, you're not Chuck Yeager. He's like, no, this is Bill.
Dude, you don't need to mention that. I think it's way better if you say, yeah, my dad flew with Yeager, man.
Yeah, good stuff. So as it turns out, I've known Shane for a number of years. He helped us out with our race team. I guess it was back probably around 2012 or so, 13, somewhere in that general area. So we've been buddies, ever since, and kind of keep up with some of the stuff that he's done. Countless world records, be it drag racing or on the salt, whatever the case may be, and was part of the Speed Demon team, and they set a record here this year on the salt as the fastest piston-powered car on the planet. And then, as it turns out, he says, do you know a guy by the name of Danny Drinan? And I said, why do I know that name? I know that name is so familiar, but I can't connect it to a discipline, and I don't know why, just off the top of my head. And he said, well, he ran a bunch of sprint car stuff and ran some IndyCar stuff. I'm like, oh, yeah, absolutely. Okay, makes sense. So it turns out that Danny Drinan is also on the Speed Demon team. I'm like, oh, I had no clue. So we just got to chatting about it. But congratulations to both of you guys on quite an accomplishment on the salt here this year.
It's a result of really a bunch of brilliant minds together. Nobody, a single person made the difference, but everybody putting their heads together brought it about this year.
It's several years worth of evolution, because they had a car before this, the old Speed Demon, and that car was fast, and they set lots of records with that car too before I ever was involved with them. And then that car crashed in 2014, I think.
Yeah.
The first time you do it, you can always think of ways to do it better next time. So that's kind of how this car came to be. And I mean, we just keep making it better every year. And it's a group of people that are all basically experts in some area, even though we all race in different disciplines. But everybody brings something to the table, and there's a level of respect that's given. That's like when you step in the door. It's no like so. There's no big arguments about what to do with this or that. It's always like, somebody has an expertise in a certain area. It's like, well, what do we do to fix this? And somebody knows, because that's what they do. So it accelerates really fast as far as development goes. So that's why it's able to do what it's able to do.
It takes run after run to really see how those systems are going to affect things, and a lot of times you put a safety in place to make sure something catastrophic doesn't happen, but that enabling that action can bring about another problem. And, as many times as you try to put fail safes in place, they bring about something that you didn't expect. And that was, a lot of what we went through in the first couple of runs.
Might as well throw our friends at Lucas Oil a little love because they sponsored this car as well, so heavily involved.
Absolutely. All the lubricants on the car are for us by Lucas. And I mean, we have custom stuff for that car, for that application that Tom brews for us to use. And some of it's like, try this, and tell me which one's better. Some of it, we've already been through that process, but every single lubricant on that car comes from Lucas, and most of them are bespoke for that application. So here, let's watch the thing make a pass here. Right, so stop it. All of those speeds, you have mile 2 speed. That's really the average speed between the first mile and the second mile. So in reality, I mean, that's your speed at the 1.5 miles. 2 1/4 is your speed by looking at the time between the second mile and the 2 1/4 mile marker. Your 3 mile speed is your average speed between 2 and 3. Your 4 mile speed is your average speed between 3 and 4. And your 5 mile speed is then your average between 4 and 5. Exit speed is a 132-foot long speed trap, 132 feet before the 5th mile. Right? So your exit speed is what you're ending the mile at. You're entering the mile at something less than that, and the average over that distance is 469. So in this case, you might say it's 8 mile an hour less than 469. It enters at 461 at the end of the 4th mile, exits at 477, average ends up being 469, 298. By the way, you qualify for your record return run. If you qualify and you screw up on your record return run, you don't get the record, you start over qualifying. You don't get to try again to get the record.
And this actually kind of goes back to NHRA. I mean, I don't remember when they actually changed the rule, but you used to have to back up your record within 1%. I mean, that was forever and ever and ever. And just a few years ago, they finally said, okay, listen, our timing system is solid enough now that the backup within 1% is always correct. The first time he did it is probably correct. Let's just go with the first time. So now you can set a record on your first effort if you are able to get over it depending on ET or speed. But they clearly have not adjusted out on the salt.
But you still have to back that up, don't you? Don't you still have to back it up?
You don't need a 1% backup.
You don't have to do that anymore.
No more.
Yeah.
One and done. They've changed it. They've adapted it to the Facebook rule, which is if you do it once and you put enough qualifiers on it. This is the world's fastest blue Mustang with 28-inch tires on the back and tinted windows and a small block with twin turbos on alcohol
and chrome
3 injectors.
Krager's.
With one rusty spoke.
Good job.
Yes, that's good. I like that.
But
very technical.
It's pretty amazing that all the parameters that you have to fall within to make it all happen. And then, like you say, to have all of the issues. When people don't know, unless you're out there in the salt with that team, knowing everything that they're fighting their way through, you're at home and you're kind of paying attention. Oh man, it looks like they ran a pretty decent number, and then all of a sudden, you see the 429, and it's like all of a sudden 469 is like, whoa, man, there's a spread. That's a pretty big window. What happened on the first one now? When it looks like it's doing well.
It's so hard to even qualify or to set a record that you don't often want to look the gift horse in the mouth if you qualify and say, let's just not even go to impound. Let's try again because we think we can do better, because you're just sort of asking for it, right? But there is some strategy involved in it where sometimes we do, because here's the thing. If we go to impound, we're done for the day. We don't get to try again until tomorrow.
The hardest part at the same time, though, is when you go into impound, all right, now you have some time to go through the problems with the car, but you also have time to look at the data, okay? And the hardest decisions made are done right then, because you have to decide, all right, we saw this, we can change this, we can make these improvements, but at the same time, if you go too greedy, you could blow the second round and ruin the whole thing. So it's a balancing game of sometimes you have to pull the reins back and say, look, let's be comfortable with this. Let's make this little tiny improvement so we can verify what we just did instead of trying to go for broke. So it's tough.
Yeah, there's a fair bit of strategy that goes into it, but at the end of the day, we finally got almost everything right, and it ran that run that you had up there, that 477 exit, and 469 would then be, that's what it was termed, the 469 run, because that was the next qualifying run on our new 2-day-old 439 mile an hour record. So we went 469 on our own 439 a day later when we fixed all the stuff that we thought was wrong. And then we're in impound, like Danny's saying, and we're looking at that going, oh, well, that's screwed up, and this is wrong, and that's not right. And so as we're fixing these things, and the concept of just it's fast, leave it alone, you can't leave it broken. Like we have to fix it, and when we fix it, we may overachieve and screw ourselves up when we fix it, right? I mean, he was part of the group of guys that found the exhaust leak, on the one side of the engine, which was another reason why we weren't making the boost we were supposed to make. So when he finds the exhaust leak, I had already made a decision to go change the spring in one of the wastegates. There's a preload spring, and I thought I'll even this thing up by turning one spring in. So once he found the leak, it's like, well, there's the problem. I need to go now undo the spring change I made to put it back, because now we fixed an exhaust leak. We don't know what we're going to get. And then it turned out what we got was way more than we expected. And on that last run,
the fix had more effect.
Yeah, we were leaking more than we thought we were.
Than we thought we were.
So what were you? How much? What was the difference?
So it made I want to say 34 pounds of boost on that run that he just had up, that 477. And the next morning, because we fixed the exhaust leak, it ran into the next safety, which was cutting the boost control off if it got to 38 pounds. So the entire way down the racetrack on that return run, it's going 38 pounds, shut the boost control off. 30 pounds, turn back on. 38 pounds, turn back off. Go down to 30, turn back on. All the way down, just like this.
Every 2.4 seconds, it's cycling back and forth.
And this is one thing that's really awesome about this whole team and having all of these kind of guys show up from different disciplines, different genres. Somebody says, you know what? Why is Shane at the starting line? And when the car's at the other end of the track, we got to wait for him to come all the way from the starting line to get his laptop on the car and get the data out. We could be way faster at turning the car around if Shane was at the finish line instead. So Shane, from now on, you're going to be at the finish line in the finish line truck, which turned out to be completely rad because that thing comes by at that speed. Dude,
there's nothing in my life I've ever seen when you're down there at that end and that thing goes by you.
Hell, I'm just watching it on TV.
It doesn't do it justice.
I just can't imagine anywhere I'd be standing close enough to watch it go by and hear it where I still feel safe knowing if something went wrong, you could be in the wrong place and there's no getting away from it.
The closest you can get is a quarter mile to the side of the course. So we're a quarter mile away from the car. But it sounds like a P-51 dive bomb in your ass. I mean, it's like... I can't even. It's so awesome. Every time it happened, I'd be outside the truck. They'd be, get in, we gotta go. Oh yeah, sorry, forgot for a second.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You could have just heard it 2 hours earlier, and when it goes by again, it's like
you're
the first time you ever heard it.
Yeah, right.
Send vibrations through.
Yeah. Oh my God, it's phenomenal.
Oh my goodness.
I hope to get there one day to go see that.
By all means, like if you are into cars in any way, shape, or form, you deserve to treat yourself to going to Bonneville at least one time in your life.
We'll take our mobile studio.
If you go, you guys should do that.
There's one really amazing part of the whole Bonneville experience, and that I've been in motorsports most of my life. All right, and when you're at the racetrack, people are friendly. They'll say hi, whatever, but they don't want you in their pits per se. They don't want you looking at what they're doing. They don't want to tell you what they're doing. But when you go to Bonneville, it's a complete 180-degree spin. The people all but drag you into their pits to show you how they built it, what they did, and it's just a whole completely different mindset. It was really, really refreshing to be around a new group like that.
How many people did it take to make that happen? How many people were on the team?
26.
Yeah, it was a bunch.
Wow. All from different areas.
All from different areas,
different disciplines, and
some of them from the shop that work on it on a continual basis during the rest of the year, and 3 or 4 or 5 of you guys that flew in just strictly for Bonneville.
Yeah. Kenny is the Carbon Kenny. He's the genius of the carbon world. His brother Keith runs the Hendricks fabrication shop. So there's experts from every area coming out there to make it all
Carbon.
happen.
Carbon, yeah, I saw it on his stuff too, right? Yep. He's on that, yeah.
Yep.
Kenny Duttweiler, you guys mentioned him.
Definitely.
Yep.
Yeah.
The nice part is there's such a respect level. Like when it's time for an engine change or there's been a failure, we don't talk. Everybody knows what to do and make it happen. Nobody worries about, that's my job.
There's no finger pointing and, you screwed that deal up or that's his fault. It's like everybody just like, we know why we're here. Stuff happens.
How do we go better? First of all, engine change stuff, they've got that down to a science with that car. I mean, it's like a drag car. It's like the only Bonneville car that's built like a drag race car. They can have the old one out and the new one in, and that means go from big to small block if you want, or put the same kind of engine in. And they can have that done in, I think, an hour and 5 they did
Well, we had the motor change done the first day with going from the big motor to the next one up in the list in about 40 minutes. Okay, and that's changing exhaust systems, wiring, everything from the turbo attachments, everything that has to happen. So it's a pretty good system.
Wow, that's really good system.
And then
That's
after
amazing.
they figured out they could fix the big block, they took that one
Took
back,
one back out
again
and put the other
big
motor
block
back
in
Well,
it.
it's only 40 minutes, dude. What's the big deal?
And it's not hot this time.
Yeah, right.
We now are making a list because we can't remember next year what we were talking about that we needed to fix this year for next year. But right now, I think that list has 96 items on it. Some of them are some are related to the car. Some are, hey, we need this wrench, we need this tool. And some of them are, how do we run the car better? Let's look into why this is happening. So again, we have a huge list. Everybody's ideas combined. Everyone that went sent some number of items to make better the team better as a whole. And so we got to work through that between now and when we go run again.
What's the goal for next year?
Total
When you go
world
481,
domination.
when you go 481, there's one number that screams at you immediately, and that for sure is the goal.
In my mind, unless someone, because I don't know what the actual goal is. I know what my goal is. My goal is, let's see if we can go 500. Now, if that's
sure.
not in line with what everybody else
I mean,
wants
when I
to do,
saw the
someone needs to tell
481,
me.
I'm like, how do you go
Right.
481 and not say, I think we can go 500?
Well, and from Shay and I could probably back this up. If you look at the data, there's a lot of areas we could still make improvements.
Well, and
on.
clearly we had a chance to talk before the show. Shane's actually staying with me for a couple of days, so we were chatting about it. And you're right. I mean, all the little things that have gone wrong, that if you make all of those right, there's big gains there.
Well, we have these alarms that come up that, tell you if something's wrong with the car. So, you don't go make your record return run with a cylinder out because the dash is telling you, hey, number one cylinder's not running. And you can choose to do something about it or decide if it's lying or whatever you're going to do. So from time to time, when you power the car up, it will flag an alarm because it just crosses the corner of the thresholds as the system is booting up and it's not all the way up. So it did. They turned the car on for the record return run, and it had an alarm on the dash. And since I wasn't there, Kenny didn't know how to click. There's a button on the dash. It says OK alarm. If you just press that button, the alarm goes away. Everything's normal. But the alarm comes up, turns on all the warning lights. The warning lights have priority over the shift lights. So it's got the red warning lights flashing in George's face. And there's the in-car, they told us about it. But the in-car afterwards, it's like so painful to watch because George's point, you can't hear the audio, but you could tell what's going on. He's like, look at the dash. Kenny leans over and he looks at it. And then Kenny goes like this and George goes like this. And
Silent movie.
and then Kenny goes, and he leans in and he tells George, and you can just make out, he's like, just shift it on the shift light. Or, just shift it on the rev limiter. So, okay, that's what he does. He runs it out, runs it into the rev limiter, lets it sit on the limiter, plugs it in the next gear, waits till it hits the limiter, plugs it in the... So
sometimes he let it sit on the limiter quite a while.
And make sure it's there.
and I can't take anything away from him. You tell him to put it on the rev limiter, and he does what he's told. So, it is what it is. It's back to, if I had been there, I could have fixed it if the alarm wasn't there, which was part of me programming something beforehand and deciding it was going to be fine.
That also a part of the issue that, you're on a 5-mile course, you're at the finish line and no radio communication because you're too far away?
Yeah, we have a radio, but I don't think they even thought to get on the radio because they were starting the car to go make the run. And I think they just, instead of shutting the car off and saying, hang
instinct.
on, it was like, hey, you know what, just shift it when it hits the rev limiter. So that run, from the time George comes off the truck, which I'll tell you another story about this too, but from the time George comes off the truck, goes full throttle until he pulls the chute is 69 and a half seconds. 60 and a half seconds. Full throttle, right? He's on the rev limiter for 13 and a half of those 60 seconds. So we're not accelerating at the rate that we could accelerate had we not been on the rev limiter. So right off the bat, if you fix the silly things that happen with that run, my guess is we're going to go 6-7 mile an hour faster out the back. So it's going to go out the back at 486, 487. It's going to average probably 2 or 3 mile an hour, go 472, 473 average without turning it up, really. You're just making it do what it's actually supposed to do.
And if the turbo stayed at a steady boost.
All of these things are going to be better, right? And then if you turn it up from there, we made a run earlier in the week that went about 428. It was at about 2/3 full power. And we gained about 1,000 horsepower gain, and you can't even say it was a full 1,000 because the boost is up and down. But if you use the average of 34, that's about 1,000 horsepower increase, and we gained 60 miles an hour exit speed from that 1,000 horsepower. We probably realistically, without changing any hardware on the engine, have another 300 or 400 horsepower left. And if we put a turbo on that is more efficient for that size engine, we could potentially have 500 or 600 more horsepower left. So with 500 or 600 more horsepower, assuming we went 486 out the back on that run,
30 miles an hour, right?
I'm not that good at the math, but I'm guessing that might be enough to go over 500.
And then what you're looking for is 19 miles an hour, so maybe there's enough to.
And if it's not, then whatever, I'm wrong. I'm almost always wrong anyway, so who cares?
It's also relative to the moisture content of the salt.
Yeah,
we
the
had
salt,
an
the key.
awesome track this year.
Salt has to be good. If the salt's good like it was this year or better, I'm pretty sure we can do it. Now, again, you saw how hard it was just to do what we did this year. How many 25 things are going to go wrong, but everything goes right and the salt's good. I'm pretty sure we can do it. I don't think we can average 500, but I definitely think we can exit at 500.
So what do you look for in the salt?
Well, it's the moisture content. You know, it was the driest it's been in quite a while out there because when it gets moist, it loses grip. Imagine that you're just running in slush in a sense, and the tires are round. There is no flat contact spot on the bottom of these tires. So the actual area that's touching the ground is maybe a ½ inch wide. Okay, so that on salt, which is not solid anyway, the traction, the available grip is so minuscule. When you add moisture to it, it just gets horrible. So having dry salt is a big part of having the grip to go that fast. The thing makes thousands of pounds of downforce, but you have thousands of pounds of horsepower trying to rotate that round tire on a no grip surface. So it's really important to have the grip of the surface itself.
So we're going.
We need some dates.
Throwing it out there right now, August 7th through 13th, 2021. Block off on your calendar. You don't have to come for the whole week, but definitely come early in the week.
No, we got to be there for the whole week.
We'll have
to
our mobile
experience
studio
all
by
this.
then.
Yeah.
That's right. Thanks for the pressure, Georgia. Anyhow,
Right?
what's the ride on that? I mean, I know that it's somewhat smooth, but
Well, this year is reasonably smooth, but there's other years where it's terribly, terribly rough. Like the year Danny Thompson went 448 or whatever he did, you could see him making corrections in the wheel that are like insane. And it's like, is he even moving? Because nothing's vibrating or shaking around. And years before that, it's like, it's bumping and shaking around and it's crazy in there. You can't even see how he could focus at all.
I remember when Raleigh was still with USAC, and USAC used to time that. Am I right by saying that?
Yeah, I ran into him at Kokomo a couple of weeks ago, sitting together, and he was talking about that part of it. That he used to really enjoy being out there and being part of USAC, taking care of it.
I remember when he told me that we were at some event, and he goes, I got to get out of here. I'm headed to Bonneville. I said, oh, cool. You going to check it out? He goes, no, we do the timing for it. So, yeah.
And just to follow up really quickly, so just to for the fans that are listening in and possibly watching, Shane is really the data acquisition guy. You are the computer guy. You pay attention to a lot. I mean, one of the guys, and pay attention to that end of it. Danny, I'm guessing you're a master fabricator guy. Why did they bring you onto the team?
It started off when they went to build the new car. Steve Watt, who sort of is a leader of this whole ship, he owns Maxwell Industries. We've been friends for many years. And he said, look, he goes, there's a bunch of systems that I need somebody to come out and build. Like the canopy on it is done very much like a jet fighter, okay? I designed and built that stuff. There's a lot to do. I built a majority of the stuff in the cockpit control systems and many parts of the car all the way through. That was the fabrication end of things. But this year I kind of got asked to take on a different role. And part of it was maybe be a mediator, a liaison between Shane and Kenny Duttweiler. And through my experience in motorsports, I very respectfully observed Shane and Kenny and what they were seeing data-wise and offered some sort of racer's advice on occasion. And it was very difficult position to be put in at the last minute. They called me and asked me to do it. And I was like, oh, God, you can't possibly ask me to go in between two of the best in the world and tell them what to do. And
Did you come and say you realize I'm divorced, right? I mean, it didn't work out that well for me.
So it was it was a great challenge of mine to go out there and first of all earn their respect. And learn the system. Shane knows it like the back of his hand. Okay, he instantly can respond to anything he can see on the screen. He's done it so long and he knows it so well. It's really refreshing to work with somebody that knows their whole program so well. And I probably wore him out with questions for the first couple of days, trying to pick his brain to see how he looked at things. And I just was offering the racer's point of view on a lot of things. They know how to make big power, but a lot of times from a racer's perspective, it's about how to get to the finish line. And I hope that some of my inquiries will help change things this year.
Look, I think I know what I know because I built it all on logic. Maybe some of it is experience, but most of it's logic and physics. But sometimes there's a gray area. And even just in explaining it to someone, you go, oh, wait a minute, it can't work that way. Just by having the words come out of your mouth and tell somebody, you go, oh, that can't be right. And now you rethink that. Now all of a sudden you straighten that little error out that you had in your thinking. And so for me, I'd welcome having him.
A lot of my inquiries, if you were when I would see something in the data, all right, he's got hundreds of channels of data to look at. And to try and analyze all of that we have 30 minutes, okay, is an enormous job. But for him to try and have to do all of that and come up with suggestions for changes, it's just truthfully asking too much of a guy. So for me to be able to sit there and look at things and respectfully ask a question to maybe trigger something in his mind to steer him that direction, I think our chemistry worked really well together.
Well, and you brought that up. You brought that exact scenario up where you said, instead of me trying to figure it all out myself, the way we work on this team is I tell everybody what the problem is because somebody might locate the problem that has nothing to do with my end of it, and then I can go verify that what they said is correct. And you said that was exactly the scenario one time.
There's 750 channels of data. Between me and Kenny, there's no way we're falling down the wormhole of whatever the most obvious problem is with the car right now, and we're in the middle down here with our heads in the hole trying to figure out where the problem is. And someone standing back could look and go, hey, what's going on with the oil pressure right there? And then, I don't know, I can't even look there. I'm busy. I'm beyond the oil pressure. I'm way down here looking at this other problem. And they steer you back into the realm of, hey, what about this? And, oh, man, that's really what's wrong. We could fix it. And we would have made another run and made a mistake. But we took one guy found one thing that made it worth it. So
let's talk about Danny Drynan for a moment. We'll go back in time. An accomplished USAC racer, number of wins inside of a midget, and chasing a championship at one point. Matter of fact, it looked like you were going to win one. You've also attempted to qualify for the 500, and in both instances, things didn't go a little bit wrong. They went pretty big wrong.
Yeah, there's been a lot of bumps in the road all the way. Back in '92, that was the first picture we're seeing here on the wall. A pressure move that I truly put on that I put on myself, the pressure of winning the championship. It meant so much to me. I made a stupid mistake. I put a move on Mahoney there going into the corner, which I never would have done or never should have done, and ran over his tire and about ended things for me. But it gave me the drive to get back. I mean, that happened in August, and it separated my arm at the elbow, and it chopped my finger off, and it crushed the retina in my eye, and broke my pelvis, and made a mess of me. But in November, I was back in the race car.
Oh my God! Really?
And I won the first heat race back in the car, trying to prove to myself that I hadn't lost it, which was not really true. There was a lot of head injuries from that incident that took a couple of years to work through and get my confidence and my game back. But I think it was '94. Tony Stewart and I were having a very active year, we'll call it. There was quite a few incidents that he and I had together. One at a dirt race down in Richmond, Indiana, where I led it till about 2 laps to go, and there was a restart, and he went up through the infield and blasted me out of the way. So I went down to the next corner and punted him and parked him.
Spirited, they call that. I think that's a spirited battle.
They're getting a little sassy out there.
And that had happened.
I just couldn't see that in you. I mean,
Or Tony. I mean,
well, remind me not to piss him off.
Don't piss him off.
So the most difficult part and what changed my whole career was what USAC's decision that followed this, okay? I was sponsored by IWX. The owner of IWX came to me, and he had a whole plan laid out for me. That was going to be 2 years in USAC. Then I was going to run the NASCAR trucks, Busch Series, and Winston Cup, and I was the one that he chose to do it with. Well, the very next race after all this happened, there was 2 races in one weekend. One was Odessa, Missouri. The other was Kansas City. And he had already purchased 1,500 tickets for his employees and his best customers to come to these races. Well, they suspended me from them for the actions on the racetrack. And the owner of IWX, Steve Coulter, called, Caples was the head of the ship at the time. He said, look, he goes, we're your only corporate sponsor in this series. You know, have an understanding. Suspend him for the next 2 races. I have all these people coming. All this is in place. Nope. And Caples said, no, our decision's final. And so he called us and he fired us and he shut the race team down, and that whole plan for my life was over. And I can't blame anybody than myself, because I was the driver. I made the changes, the choices, and it changed the direction of things. So then '96 came around when the IRL started, and I think it was their way to sort of make up for what they know they did with their decision. They came to me and said, look, if you can put a driver development program, because you have background in the Indy cars, we'll get you in a ride if you can help get some other drivers through rookie orientation. So I called some friends of mine from Colorado, and they brought a car down that was an ex-Newman Haas car. And I did my ROP thing in it first, and then I did Tice Carlson, and I did Andy Mitchner, helped those 2 guys get through. And then they had me set up to drive a car for Scandia. So I went down and got fit up for the car for Scandia. And the guys from Colorado came to me and they said, look, Carlson's offered us some money to try and get him qualified for the 500, but he doesn't really have any seat time. Would you shake the car down and get it trimmed out for qualifying? I said, sure, no problem. You know, you guys helped me get here. I'll do whatever. And I probably made a big mistake at that point. My mind was already thinking about the next car, the ride, and everything that was put in place. And I went down and I did about a 6-lap run in the other car. And it had a pretty big understeer. So I said, hey, let's take some tab off the rear wing. I said, I've got to get a balance in this thing. Well, the simple fact that I said it was a pretty big understeer, normally you change the rear wicker tab in 50 thousandths increments, okay? Which doesn't sound like much, but it's tons of downforce and a big balance change in the car. Because I said big, they took off 100 thousandths. I didn't ask, they didn't say. I went out of the pits, and the first time by going into turn 1, the car swapped ends, flipped upside down, crushed me up pretty bad. And
so did it break your hip?
It crushed my hip. I have 3 steel plates and 40 screws holding it together, and 1 drill bit.
Oh my gosh.
Did they leave it in there?
Yeah.
Did they forget?
When I went in for the first meeting with the doctor after the surgery, he's got all the X-rays up on the wall, right? He's like, look, here's the plates that we put in you, and here's the screws, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm pretty good at understanding fabrication,
Sure.
all right? I said, well, that one there doesn't look like a screw. It's like, yeah. He goes, I broke a drill bit off in you, but it's stainless steel, so we just left it in there.
No worries.
No.
It'll be fine.
Yeah.
What could go wrong?
I mean, there is good news in all of this, though. From that time period till now, if you're the guy that did the cockpit on Speed Demon, and you're the same guy that put the battery in where you have to turn the car upside down to get it out, you've definitely made some improvements in your engineering. So there is light at the end of the tunnel for you after all, Danny.
Baby steps.
I appreciate that.
That's one thing I've always known of Danny, and I mean, I've been around this a long, long time, and Rick Payne is a mutual great friend of ours that had bars here and still has bars in Indianapolis, always helped Danny out, and to this day still speaks about you. You know, he came in, and of course he's Hollywood, man. He's got things moving and shaking as usual, and but you know, he comes in, and we always share Danny's stories. But I mean, just some of the things that Danny would show up with at the track, you're like, man, what is that? And I'm telling you, he would go out and he would do amazing things with it.
Rick was actually a big part of the very first aero car that I built. It was. I worked in the IndyCar industry for a long time, and I was like, I've had enough of this. I want to go off and pursue my career. So I didn't plan it really well. I rented a shop, and I had a toolbox, and that was about it, okay? So I started a fabrication business, and we used to go to Rick's restaurant, McGilvery's, right up the street here for lunch every day. And we created a good friendship, but I was like, man, I want to build this new car. You know, is there any way you could help me out? Well, he went to this extreme. He got a $5,000 loan for me. He goes, look, he goes, you got to make the payments, all right? He goes, if you don't make the payment, he goes, I'm going to kill you. But we always made the payments, but it was that $5,000 that gave me the capital to build that first car and get me going. It was he's been a huge part of my life.
Yeah, that's cool, man. Great
I think
deal.
in 16, when the new Speed Demon got built, and we were going to go to Bonneville, and I didn't know you had anything to do with the car before that, but Steve's like, yeah, we're going to have, Carbon Kenny and his brother Keith, and we'll have Drinan, and we'll have this. And I'm like, Drinan, why do I know that name? Like, Drinan who? Danny Drinan. Like, the IndyCar guy? Because I remember you from that when I was like 20 when you ran Indy, and I remembered.
Damn, Danny, how old are you?
Sorry, but still, it was like, really, you're going to bring that guy? Just I don't know. It's just something the name always stuck with me. And I think because you were basically independent coming there to run, so you always go for the underdog.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I had some couple other opportunities in '98. The Baker team called me and asked me if I'd run, and we missed the race by 0.02 of a second, which was disappointing. And then I thought I finally got my golden grace. I worked for Ron Hemmelgarn Racing, for a couple years, running his team before I started my business. And in 2000, Lee Koonsman called me up and he says, "Hey," he goes, Hemmelgarn wants you to run the second car with Buddy. Well, they had just won the championship, and I thought, oh my God, this is the holy grail. I finally got the deal. But the unfortunate thing was, it was the first year of the 3-year cycle, and the new cars were out, and I got the 1-year-old car, and the new cars were 6 miles an hour faster. And I was the only guy in a 1-year-old car, and we just didn't make it again. But
how many people though do you know that have ran an Indy?
I've had I've had opportunities that I feel blessed to have. I didn't make the race, but I've been able to do things that very few guys get chosen to do.
Robin Miller was in here, sitting where Shane is, which is we cut it to the PG version of Robin Miller, but he was talking about that. He was talking about the guys that make it, right, or the guys that get to run that track, and he's like, you're in another group. You're in a whole nother program right there. And I remember that. I remember Buddy, and I had a guy that I used to race go-karts with that was on Buddy's team. And so I remember all that stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that, you wish you could have, would have, but man, at the looking back, it's like, yeah, there's not many people that get that opportunity to do some of that cool stuff. So.
Talk to me a little bit about, we'll stay focused on you for a moment, and we're going to flip over to Shane, who's a wild card. So Drinan Industries, I'm going to give you a little bit of plug here and let people know what you're doing now, obviously with all of that history, but I kind of cruised through the website a little bit, and I see something called a combustor housing. I'm like, well, I don't know what the hell that is, but it looks pretty freaking cool. And then an aircraft carrier waste recovery to a Cosworth IndyCar exhaust, side pod oil tank for a 65 gurney, and then stainless steel handrails and fencing. I'm like, well, that covers a gamut of.
Hey, and don't forget the mini wind tunnel too.
And the mini wind tunnel, yeah, super cool. And then clearly you do a lot of fabricating on the Speed Demon and the cockpit and stuff. So I mean, it's a wide variety of options at Drinan Industries that you produce.
We existed for quite a few years just building race cars and race car components. Okay. From a business perspective, there was a lot of pride in it. Our cars won a lot of races, all right? And I found out I was really living off the pride rather than the dollars and cents of it. Unfortunately, the industry doesn't have very much of a profit margin in it. So then I finally took my eldest sister's advice and started looking other directions, and that's what sort of took us to the real world, if you will. I still love motorsports, and I still have my fingers involved in it in many directions, including my son's stuff. But to make money at it is pretty tough these days compared to what we can do in the real world.
And speaking of your son, what's he running now? Where are you at?
He's a senior this year, and he wants to pursue an engineering career.
He's a senior.
Yeah.
Wow.
Is that amazing?
Wow.
And so now
I remember coming to the shop. I mean, it's been a few
Yeah.
years ago, and seeing the quarter midgets or something, and Danny's explaining to me how he's getting thrown out of the quarter midget races because he's engineered around every one of their rules and has them all upset, and they're throwing his son out of these races. Clearly,
Well, that was a big part of what makes up me. All right.
Right.
When through the midget stuff,
Oh, yeah.
sprint cars, everything
yeah.
was all right. If this is your rule book, all right.
Exactly.
That's my guidelines. And if I can use my mentality to think of something that doesn't offend
Right.
these rules, but fits in them, so be it. So there was a lot of USAC rules that were written after the fact. Was something that we brought out.
Drynan rule.
rule.
Another Drynan
Oh,
rule.
it's absolutely hilarious because I know what he's talking about, but then him telling me, I mean, he was still at it with his son stuff. I'm like, okay, I get it. I get it.
Well, the rules said
Yes, exactly.
tires had to stick out 2 1/4 inches outside of the body. So that's where they were. Okay.
Maybe the body's
Body was
a
8
little
feet
bigger.
wide.
Well, it's about placing his body weight in the right location. So
This
now-
goes back to the battery.
well, the thing that bothered me with the whole quarter midget deal was, and it's been that way since I drove them a long time ago. The kids hang out the side. Okay. To me, it's a safety issue. Sure, there haven't been horrible things, but every change in
Bad
motorsports comes about when a horrible thing happens. So why don't we get ahead of it? So instead of having him hang out of the car, I completely offset the chassis and laid him down like he was in an Indy car. So I had more left side weight percentage than what they had hanging out, but he was completely contained. So I think I killed 2 birds with 1 stone. I made a super safe package for my son, but I had something that was a little advantageous.
It's funny that when the Swansons were on here, they were talking about their dad, Mike, that ran super modifieds. Mike Swanson, well, he told him, "You're not running quarter midgets." He said, I'm not getting you out there on the track. You hanging your head out. And so it's the same.
Yeah.
They made it a point to say that too.
Yeah.
There's a huge group of diehards that want things to stay the way they've been forever. And I've been in that position at parts of my life, but I've always looked at something, if you look at my career, it's about finding something that's a little better than what exists.
Right.
So,
Right.
I know you don't have anything cast in stone here, but any upcoming really cool projects for you, Shane?
Really cool. I've got some stuff coming up. I was telling you guys earlier, I'm going to work on this IndyCar engine or something in a couple weeks. It's an old 95 IndyCar, historic, whatever.
Cosworth, you said?
Yeah, Cosworth, yeah, V8 turbo. And other than some drag race stuff with some of the teams that I work with that's coming up in November, it'll be whatever happens to fling by in the days between now and then. I mean, it's kind of like you guys. The schedule is, you kind of know you're going to be doing stuff at this time of the year, but you don't exactly know what, and you might have a clear schedule on Monday, and by Tuesday, you're booked for the month. So it's just kind of how it goes. But I do everything, So Porsche Club thing I do with some guys that have a shop right down by where
Pikes
I live.
Peak? You were at Pikes Peak?
Pikes Peak was awesome. So I always wanted to go to Pikes Peak, but I never wanted to go unless I thought I could go with a team and be successful. I didn't just want to go there and be an also-ran, basically. And
not to interject, but the guys that run Dahl & Black.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the same guys that brought the car here in '96 that I drove.
Oh, really? That was the guys
Oh,
from
really?
The
Colorado?
Huff Powers, awesome
Okay.
guys,
And they actually did good with that car this year,
That
didn't they?
actual car that I drove here at the Speedway won there.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So there's the tie-in. Pikes Peak at Pikes Peak is another thing, just like Bonneville. It is not just simply about the racing. It's about the history, and there's something that affects you deep down when you go to that place, like seeing Niagara Falls, or maybe going to this track. You guys have this little track, this little oval over here. It's that same kind of feeling, a connection with something way bigger than what you are.
For sure, yeah.
Well above and beyond all the awesomeness of the racing. And Pikes Peak is the same way. You go there and it just sort of, I can't even describe it other than you just need to go so you can feel it for yourself. It's the same thing at Bonneville.
I'll never forget my first experience. First of all, I drove up it in a rental car, and at one point, I don't know, maybe 11,000 feet or something, I have the rental car on the floorboard because it doesn't have any more power. It can barely go up. It has no air to breathe. I pull the car over, hop out of the car. It's a little brisk, of course. And I see this rock. You just got to go down this little valley and up over to this rock, and then I was going to be able to see like a couple of turns more. You know, it's just going to give me a better vantage point. I'll be able to sit down. It's going to be awesome. I'm excited, man. I'm excited. So I start over towards this rock, and I get like up to the top of the first little knoll. I mean, we're talking like, I don't know, maybe it's 50 yards away or something like that. And by now, I can hardly breathe, I can hardly walk, and I see that rock where I want to go. I'm like, yep, that's never happening. Not going to happen. But I was blown away at just how difficult it was to function and do anything because there's just quite literally no air to be had.
You notice it right away. I mean, man, even without even hardly exerting anything, when you go to the top of that place and go to the gift shop, you park the car, like you're saying, and walk 50 feet, and you're winded, and by the way, you're dizzy, and it's like, what's going on? And all you've done is walk across a parking lot 50 feet. Yeah, so that's the exciting part of the challenge for me, to tune the engine and make it run like it's supposed to. And the car that I was working, or the team that I was working with, had turbos on a Porsche, and unfortunately we crashed out both of the last 2 years that we tried to go up there, which, you know, that's a completely different story, and it sucks. But the mere fact of being there and experiencing, I can't wait to go back, and I hope they want to rebuild the car again for the third time so we can go, because it's awesome. And they are a team who is, like the Speed Demon team, motivated to do what it takes to win, and that's what I want to be a part of. I want
You
to
know, it was strange when you started talking about the motor not having enough air. I instantly was thinking about what it was going to do to the driver up there. You're thinking off the motor.
Absolutely. I'm an engine guy. And the driver
He's a driver guy, yeah. But a fabricator, of course, but still from a driver's point of view.
Perspective,
Yeah.
In my perspective, all right, and I'm not afraid of heights, but the thought of doing what I do on a racetrack doesn't bother me at all. But to not know what the next corner really is like, or how far down it is, that's beyond my courage, we'll say.
Well, that's why I don't drive either. It's well beyond my courage to do any of that. Way
Incredible
easier
stuff.
to look at swiggly lines and go, oh, we need more power here, or you need to hold the throttle open longer there than it is to actually
Why
be the
did you
poor guy
lift?
in there doing it. Yeah, exactly.
Well, once again, thanks for taking the time, fellas, to come out here. Great stuff. I know the stories are just scratching the surface with both of you, but we'll get you both back on here at some point in time. We got to get you and Paul on here at one point, and maybe we get the two of you guys and get Kenny Duttweiler on here and
There we go.
let him tell some stories, and George, and just dig a little bit deeper. But awesome stuff. And again, thank you so much for coming on here. Thanks for the insight behind the teams, and it's just all great stuff, man.
Thanks for having us.
Man, it's been a blast, like I said. So anytime there's an opportunity to do it again, I'm game.
Cool, man. I'll buy you a beer.
Ooh, sounds like a plan.
Carl, thanks, buddy. Don't forget to check out the Bentonhausen 100 at the Illinois State Fairgrounds in Springfield, Illinois, presented by Fatheads Eyewear. We'd love to see you out there Sunday, October 18th. Be sure to check out all the latest sun and optical eyewear at fatheads.com. Special thanks to our sponsorship partners at Elliott's Custom Trailers and Carts. This has been a production of Fathead Studios. Please remember to subscribe.